Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to this special ranking, or rather rankings, my top 20 classic Doctor Who stories. Now, this was originally going to be a single part ranking when I started recording. However, during recording I realised it had to be two parts, and then when I saw the length of the footage for what would have been the second, I thought it might have to be three parts, and even now I'm thinking maybe it might even go to four parts, depending on how long this bit is, alongside the footage that is for the planned part one. It might even go to four parts, so what I call part two might end up being part three, and what was supposed to be part of part two is going to be part three, maybe even part four, depends on how this first bit goes. So yeah, this is basically. I'm also having to film my introduction bit because I lost the footage for that. So an introduction plus honourable mentions for my top 20 classic stories. So my top 20 classic Doctor Who stories. These are my 20 favourite stories. And I'd also like to say that there is 26 stories of the classic series that I personally would give 10 out of 10 ratings to. There are 26 precisely, about, or more or less anyway. Unlike the new series, there isn't at least one a season, and even with the new series, some on the rewatches that might change for series 7 and 8. Certainly, series 1 to 6 and 9 onwards certainly have at least one. If you watch the series 1 and 2 rankings, they might be the ones with the most, to be honest. This also does not include specials as set standalone seasons as well. But as for the classic series, not every season had at least one 10 out of 10 stories. In fact, some seasons didn't even have 9s. I think the highest some seasons got, like seasons 11 and maybe 23, I think, were 8. So they didn't even get to 9 out of 10s. But the ones that got 10 out of 10s are on this list, either in the top 20 or as the 6 honourable mentions. So I will read the 6 stories that didn't quite make the top 20 list, but did get 10 out of 10 scores, and therefore will be worthy of getting a honourable mention for this ranking. Also, before start, I will be saying the title, and then I'll be saying which season they're from, which doctors in those stories, and what year they came out. For example, this is a 9 out of 10 story. I'll use an example. The 2 Doctors from season 22 with the 2nd and 6th Doctors, 1985. That story is not on this list, nor is it an honourable mention. It's a 9 out of 10 story for me, but I used it as an example. Use another 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 example. Terror of the Zygons from season 13, with the 4th Doctor from 1975. Again, that one will not be on this list, nor will it be an honourable mention. It's a 9 out of 10 scored story that I think those two would be maybe in the next 4, or to be top 30 material, or at least within the top 40. Adding more and more stories we get further down in the ranking scores, but these 26 are 10 out of 10, and I will do the 6 honourable mentions first before getting in to the list properly. So honourable mentions, going backwards in terms of preference, we have The Brain of Morbius from season 13 with the 4th Doctor, 1975 to 76. The Android Invasion from season 13 with the 4th Doctor from 1975. The War Machines from season 3 with the 1st Doctor, 1966. The Evil of the Daleks from season 4 with the 2nd Doctor, 1967. The Chase from season 2 with the 1st Doctor, 1965. And The Talons of Wang Chiang from season 14 with the 4th Doctor, 1977. I kind of feel bad about putting Talons of Wang Chiang 21st instead of in the top 20, because that one is a very good story and a very popular one at that. But unfortunately, there are some stories that maybe some fans won't agree with me on, but I think there are some stories that are better that made it into the top 20, and those are some of those 20 stories. So Talons of Wang Chiang sadly had to be 21st, and then the others, as you could tell, were going from backwards in preference from 26 to 21. So Chase is 22, Eve is 23, War Machines is 24, and the 2 season 13 to 25 and 26. There is another season 13 story coming up in the ranking, though, don't worry, and plenty more 10 out of 10s to come from. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my top 20 classic Doctor Who stories ranking videos. And I shall now hand over to my past self to do the ranking. Starting us off with number 20, you're going to hate me for putting this one so low as well. Inferno from Season 7 with the 3rd Doctor, 1970. I like Inferno a lot. In fact, on the rewatch for the review, I loved it. I liked it before. I think I only saw it once or twice before, but I loved it on the rewatch, and I thought it was a great story. And it's also my third favourite 3rd Doctor story. And in the 70s ranking, it comes 9th. But unfortunately, I think there are 19 other stories from this classic series that are better than this one. I think it's a great story and a great season finale to season 10, which is one of the best seasons of the show, due to having 2 extremely good stories, one of which is coming up later, another very good story, and also another good one. With so we've got 4 very good to extremely good stories in this season. But unfortunately, Inferno, compared to 19 other stories in the classic series, for me, it's only 20th. It's brilliant, but I think there's 20 that I prefer. Moving on to number 19, this story is actually from this season before Season 7. This is from Season 6, and there's 2 10 out of 10s in Season 6. And this is my second favourite of the 2. It is The Invasion from Season 6 with the 2nd Doctor, 1968. This is a very good story. Really, really enjoyed it. Great stuff. It is a bit long. Maybe it could have been 8 parts. Maybe it should have been 6. Then again, there was a bit where there was the original plan to kill off a supporting character, and they cut that bit due to time and cost. So maybe it could have been a 9-parter in that case. But I thought it was a very good story, really enjoyable, and some really great stuff in it. Great Cyberman story, great unit introduction to Unit, Brigadier's great, and also the animated episodes 1 and 4 were 2 of my favourites before the new BBC Studios animation episodes got better and better each year. They released from Power to Sharda to Macra to Faceless. We'll see what View from the Deep goes. Well, Macra Terror's got my favourite animated episodes at the moment, but Invasion are definitely my favourite animated episodes that were not done by BBC Studios. And this isn't just for the missing episodes reanimated, it's this and Infinite Quest and Grim Schalke for overall, after the BBC Studios episodes, due to Cosgrove Hall's excellent animation. And I'll be reviewing the Infinite Quest within the week, by the way, for this channel, midway through the Series 7 reviews between 42 and Human Nature. So you got that to look forward to. But yeah, I thought The Invasion was a great story. Moving on to number 18, this story was my favourite from Season 16. When I first saw it, then after a rewatch or 2, it dropped to 2nd, and then it dropped back up. It went back up to 1st for the viewing for the reviews. This is easily the best story from the Graham Williams era after the magnificent City of Death. The Androids of Tara from Season 16 with the 4th Doctor, 1978. Yeah, The Androids of Tara is a gem in easily the best Graham Williams era series. I wasn't a big fan of Season 15, and Season 17 is, in my opinion, the worst Doctor Who season. Season 17 only has one saving grace, and one would have been saving grace if it had been broadcast. But the other stories, I might talk about more of them in a more season video concerning about the seasons, but suffice to say that unlike Season 7, Season 17 was a disappointing run. Season 15 was a bit better. There were some stories that were great, there were some stories that were good, and then there were some stories that were absolutely terrible. I'm looking at you in Underworld. Season 16, on the other hand, only had one dud. One massive dud, the Power Patrol, the next story. But I enjoyed the rest of them, and the highlight was easily the Androids of Tara, although I do also really enjoy the Stones of Blood and the Pirate Planet. Armageddon Factor is also, I think that's underrated, and the Rivals Operation also needs to have a bit more attention. Only Power Patrol sucks. But this is a masterpiece story, in my opinion, or at least compared to most of the other stories of the year, minus City of Death. And this one just really enjoyable, had a lot of fun, fantastic location work in Leeds Castle near Maidstone in Kent, and Tom Baker, Mary Tan. This is probably my favourite Romana 1 story. Yeah, Season 16 is my favourite of hers, and probably my second favourite Romana story, full stop. So yeah, you get one of my favourites is with Mary Tam, and one of my favourites is with Lala Ward. So even, and probably my favourite John Leeson K9 story of the classic series. Yeah. This one's just, well, apart from the Five Doctors. But yeah, this one's just a really great story, really enjoyed it, and had such a great fun with it. And one of the supporting characters from the Macra Terror returns after watching the animated version of the Macra Terror about 6 times, 2 of each DVD, Blu-ray and Steelbook Blu-ray, and one of the black and white and one of the colour per copy. Saw it about 6 times, not to mention the 2 times I saw the reconstruction versions, one of them for the original review. But after watching the Macra Terror about 8 times in total, by the time I got around to watching the Androids of Tara viewing for the review, I recognised that Peter Jeffries from the Macra Terror was the villain in this story, and he was one of the best things in the Macra Terror, and he's one of the best things in this story as well. He is just so good. He's even better here, actually, because he gets to sharpen his teeth into a more villainous role, like Philip Maddock did, which is probably why his performance in The Power of Kroll is one of his weaker performances. But I do love Philip Maddock, and he pops up in the story in the honourable mentions, Brain and Morbius. But yeah, Androids of Tara, I think this is a fun, enjoyable and entertaining story, and a highlight of the Graham Williams era, alongside a certain other story that will be appearing later on this list. Top 3, I can actually see it on the list at the moment. It's top 3. Moving on to number 17. Number 17 is my favourite story from probably the best mathematical season of Classic Who. Mathematical in terms of scores, as it's from season 13. And for me, season 13 had 2 9 out of 10 stories and 3 10 out of 10 stories, 2 of which are in the honourable mentions, and this is the other one. This is the best one. The only really thing that stopped season 13 from being the best season, beyond maths, is Planet of Evil, which is 2 out of 10. Easy for me. I know some people like it, but for me, I can't stand it. And that's probably why I like seasons 25 and 26 more, because they never stooped to the low of Planet of Evil. But I think it's probably one of the strongest seasons, and this story definitely takes the top crown of the season. Pyramids of Mars, Season 13, Doctor 4, 1975. The Philip Hinchcliffe era of Doctor Who, which was from The Ark in Space through to The Talons of Wang Chiang, saw many stories that we regard as classics of the classic series. So they're classics, so to speak. But yeah, Pyramids of Mars is a widely popular story. It is, and for good reason. It's just absolutely amazing. Sutekh is an outstanding villain, and Gabriel Wolfe does a fantastic performance. So good, in fact, he came back to voice the Beast in The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit just 21 years later? 31 years later. He was so good there as well. And Sutek, like I said, Sutek's a great villain. I think he's come back to voice Sutek in Big Finish as well. We've also got some other great supporting villains, like, is it Marcus Scarman? Yeah, Marcus Scarman under Sutek's control, and robot mummies. There's actually a bit where a man gets crushed to death by robot mummies, and the story's rated U, would you believe it? But yeah, it's a great story, and the last episode where they go to Mars is also really good, very fun, and just an absolutely brilliant story. Not to mention, this and Planet of Evil are when the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane relationship really takes off. They had a great vibe together, but with Harry gone, the two of them are now more closer together, and this is the story where you can definitely see that beginning. It did start with Planet of Evil, and it had been the seeds of which had been around in season 12 and Terror of the Zygons, but with Harry gone, they are even more closer together and even more of a duo and a great partnership, and it's around here that they start to become possibly the best Doctor companion dynamic of the show. Possibly. I know some people might say this same about 7 and 8 or 10 and Rose, but in all honesty, for me it's 4 and Sarah without Harry being around, although Harry being around doesn't diminish it that much more, but I think it's even better when he's not around. But yeah, Pyramids of Mars, brilliant story. Number 16. I know some people are going to be disappointed this one's this low as well. Same for Pyramids. Number 16 is the best story from Season 7, and the second best Third Doctor story. Spearhead from Space, Season 7, Doctor 3, 1970. Yeah, I know, but Spearhead from Space is indeed a great story. The Third Doctor gets started, and he's more or less into the story midway through. It doesn't take him too long before he gets in, but doesn't rush in so quickly like the Second Doctor. Like the Second Doctor picks up like it was no trouble, whilst later Doctors takes them a little bit more time to settle in. Even the new series Doctors. Whilst with 3, he takes a little bit of time to rest, including a bit where some people try to kidnap him before he's ready to go, which is pretty cool. And John Pertwee nails it from day one, more or less. And yeah, and Brigadier Leopard Stewart is also really great as well. It's great to see him as a recurring character, and Liz Shaw makes a great first impression. With Nicholas Courtney and Caroline John giving great performances. The Autons are great concept, and it's great to see them a few more times in the show. They're not an overly recurring villain, but they're great to have come back every now and again. And yeah, I just think it's great. It's also the story that redeemed Robert Holmes, following the Crotons, which isn't a very popular story. I like it, but it's not amazing. I find it good. Some people like it less than me, I know. And then after that, he wrote The Space Pirates. Talking about going from some of the best stories of the entire show to definitely, in my opinion, the absolute worst. And it's sandwiched between two brilliant stories from that season as well, the Seeds of Death and the War Games. But the Space Pirates sucks so much. There's a few good stuff like the main cast, but besides that, there isn't really much that kind of redeems this story. So, Spearhead from Space was Robert Holmes' third story, and thankfully, after the Crotons was just good, some people might not even consider it good, they might just consider it okay, maybe even bad, and then the Space Pirates, which was just the absolute worst. We then get Spearhead from Space from Robert Holmes, and he just knocks it out of the park. And not only did this story redeem him, but it also started the process of turning him into one of the show's best writers. It would take him a few more scripts, but ultimately by the time we get to The Ark in Space, and he becomes a notable writer up until, sadly, The Power of Kroll was the biggest mistake since the Space Pirates. And then after that he took a bit of a break, but then came back for the Caves of Androzani, and a original 20th anniversary story script, but then came back for the Caves of Androzani and then stuck around until his passing in 1986, RIP. So Spearhead from Space not only is a fantastic start to the John Pertwee era, and a fantastic start to the 70s, and a fantastic first story in colour, and a fantastic first Autumn story, fantastic first Liz short story, and a fantastic first story to have the Brigadier in a more of a companion main character role rather than a supporting character like in The Invasion. And it's not only that, but it also redeems Robert Holmes as a writer and starts off him becoming one of the most famous, recognisable and popular or outright best writers of the show. Great start. Okay, so, and it's probably the second best post-regeneration story of the entire show. What's number one? It's a little story called The 11th Hour. Moving on to number 15. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Fucking burps. The Fourth Doctor, 1976. The War Machines from 19... Actually, no, that should be 1973. From 1973. The War Machines with the... So sit back, relax, and let's get started with the list properly, or at least the first bit of the list anyway, with the top 20 Doctor Who Classic Series rankings. So sit back, relax, and enjoy these ranking videos, and I will count down my top 20 Classic Series Doctor Who stories. Over to past me to continue the ranking. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my top 20 Doctor Who Classic Series stories ranking. No. And in the 70s ranking, it comes 8th or 9th. Yeah. And in the 80s ranking, in the 70s ranking, it comes 8th or 9th. But, yeah, 9th. It comes, and in the 8th, due to having four very strong due to having four mostly Moving on to number 19. This one is another story, and I'll be reviewing The Infinite Quest in a few weeks. Moving on to number 18. This story is a... Was it released in 79? No, Power Crawl 78 to 79. With only two shining... It had some pretty good stories, but there were some stories that weren't so great, and then there were some stories that... Season 16 was mostly brilliant. There was maybe Sharda and Stones of Blood. But yeah, this one was minus City of Death, and the villain from but that being said, but I do love Philip Maddock, and he's going to be popping. He would have popped up in a. But I do love Philip Maddock, and he pops up in a story in the honourable mentions. But yeah, does he pop up in here? The only story in season, the only reason season 13 probably stopped, the only thing that stopped season 13 probably being my favourite season, as well as possibly the best, the only real that's why I consider seasons 25 and 26 better, because season 7, but Spearhead from Space is just, it's a great story, really really great. The third Doctor, the space part, and it's sandwiched between two fantastic, there's a few redeeming qualities, but not enough. He certainly has become a notable Doctor Who writer, and will continue so right up until the end of the Colin Baker era.